What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, and today, folks, we'll be talking about an era in the Pokemon TCG that we hardly ever talk about. And this past week, when I was assembling the auction recap, I saw a couple of absolutely insane sales from this era, from cards that you never see auctioned off, hitting some what would have to be record prices, and I thought it would make for an interesting video. So today, we will be analyzing some insane sales from the era of XY. Mainly PSA 10 full art cards from that era. We will be including sets like Flashfire, Phantom Forces, Roaring Skies, Primal Clash, Generations. Not only are some of these cards in PSA 10 super expensive, but they're also extremely low pop for being, let's face it, modern cards. I think a lot of people would consider these cards, including myself, to be very modern. So before we get started, folks, no sponsor for today's video, just a like on your way out, and please consider being a subscriber if you're not already. And if you want to support the channel, please consider using my eBay affiliate link. I will have it in the description below. If you buy anything on eBay, click that link. It supports me tremendously, and I am super appreciative of that. Thank you so much. I do want to mention that pretty much all of these auctions you're going to see in today's video, all of these prices are from TCA Gaming, one of, if not the most reputable seller in this entire hobby. So I checked with him to make sure all these cards were paid for, and they were. So yeah, let's get into this video, starting off with the set Flashfire. How much does a Flashfire booster box sell for? The most recent sale of this box looks to be for about $2,750, and boy, let me tell you what, folks, you can get quite a few bangers out of this box. Here we have a full art Lysandre trainer card in PSA 10. Came by this week and sold for $222.50. You'll see some of these XY era trainer cards go for some big bucks. Here we have a full art Toxicroak EX that sold for $255 as a PSA 10. Now Toxicroak is not the most popular Pokemon, yet somehow this card goes for over $250. Here we have the Mega Kangaskhan EX. Now, we must note that in the XY era, we had mega cards like this Kangaskhan, but there was a non-secret rare version, and then there was like an ultra rare version. And this one right here is the ultra secret rare version. At the very end of the set, in PSA 10, this card sold for $355. And then here we have another full art trainer from Flashfire. This is the Pokemon Center Lady, selling this week for $560. And then lastly, from Flashfire, we saw this Mega Charizard EX. And much like the Kangaskhan, this one is the ultra rare version in the set. So same exact artwork, same exact card pretty much, but this one here is the number 107, and it sold for $1,075. Now, when I was seeing the sales of these XY cards, I was thinking, what are the populations of these cards? I mean, like I said, they're pretty much modern cards. This Mega Charizard EX from Flashfire has a population of only 79 PSA 10 copies. Now on to XY Furious Fist. Now let's be honest, folks. Furious Fist was not exactly the best set. It really didn't have a whole lot of amazing Pokemon. It pretty much had Lucario headlining the set. I think Lucario and like Dragonite. But first off, let me say that an XY Furious Fist booster box has most recently sold for about $1,250. Meanwhile, the Mega Lucario EX, ultra rare, secret rare version, whatever you want to call it, sold this week for $420, while this full art Lucario EX in PSA 10 sold for a whopping $1,500. And this card has a crazy low pop of only 17 PSA 10 copies. We also saw several cards from Phantom Forces this week. Here is a Phantom Forces booster box that sells for about $1,725. And then in it, you have cards like this Mega Malamar EX, and much like Toxicroak, this is just a who cares Pokemon, right? Selling this week for $221. Here's a Mega Manectric EX that sold for $355. And then we saw this full art trainer AZ selling as a PSA 10 for $1,225, and this card only has a PSA 10 population of 11. So if you're a trainer card in the XY era, it doesn't seem to matter if you're a waifu or a gaifu, you're commanding quite a premium. On we move to Roaring Skies, where a booster box sells for about $590. But in that booster box, you have several pretty valuable cards. Here is a Thunderous EX that sold for $204. This is a sale I have never seen before. Here is a Mega Latios EX that sold for $261, along with this Full Art Wally Trainer card that sold for $205. Here is a Full Art Gallade EX that sold for $227, while the Full Art Mega Latios sold for $338, and this Full Art Mega Gallade EX sold for $465. And yeah, Gallade is just one of those Pokemon nobody really knows about. It's just a very unpopular Pokemon. Up next were some insane sales from Primal Clash. A Primal Clash booster box sells for about $585. And here we have a Full Art Aggron EX that sold for $332. Here we have a Full Art Professor Birch's Observation, and this card sold for $735 this week, along with this Full Art Teammates card that sold for $1,625. And this is another extremely low population modern card, only having 12 PSA 10 copies. And then we saw this Full Art Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick that sold for $1,675. And this card only has a population of 11 PSA 10 copies. We saw a couple of sales from XY Generations, and XY Generations ETB sells for about $415. And in it, you got some pretty awesome cards. Here's a Full Art Zapdos selling this week for $286. Here is a Full Art Gardevoir EX from the Radiant collection of this set, selling for $265, while the Mega Gardevoir EX sold for $291. Here is a beautiful Flareon EX with the Vaporeon and the Jolteon right beside it. I love this card. It sold for $415. So yeah, some absolute heat in the XY era. Let's move on to something different though. Let's move on to the XY base set. The booster box sells for about $885. And let me tell you what, folks, some of the big hitters from this set, like this Venusaur EX, there are no sale prices on eBay that I could find of this card. This is it. This is the only one listed for sale. For $5,000 for a PSA 10 copy of this card. There are only 22 PSA 10s of this Venusaur, and the same thing with Blastoise. This card is listed for $5,000. It is the only one. There are no prior sales that I could find, and this card is also listed for $5,000, and it only has a population of 17 PSA 10s. And what's crazy to me, folks, is I have all these cards. The XY era is where I started back up. I was buying packs of Furious Fists and Flashfire and Phantom Forces and all these sets, and I was making binder collections. And I really had no idea that these cards were so low pop and so valuable. But I do believe, now community, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe a lot of these XY cards, the print quality was just garbage for a lot of them. I think that's why we're seeing such high prices for these cards in PSA 10, because yeah, even through Evolutions, I mean, some of the Evolutions print runs were awful. So, folks, community, what do you think of these full art cards from the XY era? Do you think these are still sleepers? Do you think the booster boxes are underrated investments considering what kind of cards you can pull from them? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching the whole way through. I really appreciate it. That's all I got for you today. I'll catch you this weekend with my auction recap. I have a lot to go over then as well, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you then.